I let my homeless sister stay in my city condo. She promised to respect my space, but after a month, I found out she had listed it online as her luxury rental. When I confronted her, she just laughed and said, "Good luck proving it." Claudine, don't be so dramatic. I found strangers in my lobby asking for the Sky Lounge. What do you mean, not dramatic? Raven smirked, barefoot, sipping from my wineglass like she paid the mortgage. They're clean. They tip well. You weren't even home this weekend. I blinked. You're renting out my condo. She put the glass down, leaned back on the sofa like she was on vacation. Technically, it's a shared space. And technically. She laughed. Good luck proving it. My sister Raven has always had a complicated relationship with consequences. We grew up in Joliet, Illinois, in a small house with creaky floors and a lot of resentment. Our mom worked 2 jobs. Our dad wasn't around, and when he was, we kind of wished he wasn't. I was the older sister. The planner. The quiet one who knew how to patch a leaky faucet or lie to the utility company to buy us another week of electricity. Raven was the wild one. Beautiful, bold, reckless. She used to sneak out the back window and steal my lipstick on her way to God knows where. We were never close. But we were sisters. We moved apart in our 20s. I went to DePaul, then got married, got divorced, rebuilt my life. I worked in legal administration, bought a modest condo in River North, a neighborhood with overpriced grocery stores and people who walked dogs in sweaters. I lived alone, and I liked it that way. Raven. Well, Raven floated. She stayed in Indiana with some guy who sold knockoff purses from the back of his car. Last I heard, she was working at a vape shop and living above a bar. Until 2 months ago, when I got a call at midnight. Claudie, I'm screwed. I have nowhere to go. She sounded like a different person. Broken. Hollow. She said her boyfriend kicked her out, she'd lost her job, she was sleeping in a Greyhound station with a charger that only worked if you twisted it. I paused. I really paused. Then I said, "Come to Chicago. You can stay with me. But only for a few weeks. You'll need to respect my space." "Of course," she said. "Thank you. I mean it." She arrived the next morning, makeup smudged, dragging a busted duffel bag and a yoga mat with a hole in it. I had cleared out the second bedroom for her. She called it a sanctuary. I called it temporary. At first, she was quiet. Sleepy. She didn't eat much, didn't talk much, spent most of the day under a weighted blanket watching reality shows on mute. I made her tea. I gave her space. I figured she needed rest. The first odd thing was the towels. I have a small linen closet off the hallway. I'd just stocked it with fresh white towels from Crate and Barrel. Fluffy, hotel style. 3 sets were missing. "Did you move the new towels?" I asked one day. She looked up from her phone. "Oh, yeah. I took a couple. Thought they were for guests." "You're not a guest. You live here, for now." She rolled her eyes but didn't argue. Then it was my espresso machine. I have a Breville model that I saved up for. It's the one indulgence I've allowed myself after years of tightening my belt. One morning, I reached for it, and it was gone. Where's the machine? It was leaking. I stored it. I think the seal's busted. That didn't sit right. It had been working fine the day before. Still, I tried not to spiral. But things started escalating. Weird knocks at the door when I was home alone. People showing up downstairs asking for suite access. The concierge called me one day and asked if I had approved a short-term guest booking. I hadn't. That's when I went online. A friend helped me search short-term rental listings in the area. We found it within 5 minutes. Designer condo in downtown Chicago, sleeps 4, chic interiors, lake view. The photos were of my actual living room. My couch. My throw pillows. My plants. The listing claimed the space came with a complimentary bottle of wine and organic breakfast baskets. There was a 5-star review from someone who said, "Host was charming and gave great nightlife recommendations." The host? Raven. She even used her own name. I stared at the screen in silence for what felt like an hour. That night, I waited until she came out of the shower, robe on, hair wrapped in one of my missing towels. "Are you renting my place out?" I asked. She didn't flinch. "Technically, it's not your place. You lease the unit, right? You don't own it." That was her defense. I lost it. Quietly, but thoroughly. My voice didn't rise, but my body shook. "You're endangering me. My lease says no subletting. You've listed my home, without telling me, to strangers. You duplicate keys. You staged photos. You impersonated a host." She sat on the couch and crossed her legs like we were having tea. "People do it all the time. It's not a big deal." I nearly laughed. "Do you realize I could be evicted?" She didn't blink. Just shrugged. "Then maybe you should buy, not rent." When I told her to take the listing down, she smiled. "Good luck proving it," she said. I felt sick for days. That kind of betrayal doesn't come in a single moment, it unravels you. I tried to be the calm one. The reasonable sister. But she had created a lie so bold, so calculated, that even my body didn't know how to respond. I had chest pains. I wasn't sleeping. I started double-locking my bedroom door. She wasn't apologizing. She wasn't leaving. So I started gathering evidence. I took screenshots of the listing. Dates, images, reviews. I contacted the rental site's customer service. They asked me to submit proof I was the legal tenant. I did. Then I contacted the building management. That meeting was awkward. I had to explain that my own sister had broken the lease agreement and invited liability into the building. They told me I was this close to getting a violation that could have led to termination of tenancy. "You need to remove her," the manager said bluntly. I printed out a formal notice. I told Raven she had 48 hours to vacate. She rolled her eyes and locked herself in her room. But she left the next morning. No apology. No message. Just silence. I thought it was over. 3 days later, I came home to 2 women with rolling suitcases waiting by the elevator. "Hi. We're here for the weekend," one of them chirped. I stared at them. "Stay where?" They showed me the confirmation. Same listing. Same photos. Still active. Raven had left, but kept the scam going. She'd arranged a lockbox outside the building with a spare key, hidden behind a flower pot. She'd turned my life into a passive income stream. I was beyond livid. I called the police. The police came that evening, but their hands were tied, at least at first. Since Raven was technically a former guest and hadn't broken in, and because I hadn't formally evicted her through a legal process, they said there wasn't much they could do about past events. However, once I showed them the listing, the reviews, the booking receipts sent to guests using my address, and the spare key Raven had hidden outside, they took things a bit more seriously. "This could be identity fraud," the officer said, flipping through the printed screenshots I'd handed him. "Especially if she's accepting payments under your name or address." "But she's using her name," I replied. "That's the weird part. She's not even trying to hide it." He looked up. "People like your sister, they're not always trying to hide. They think they're untouchable. Especially when it's family." I filed a police report. Then I filed a fraud complaint through the rental site, again. This time, with the police report attached and a letter from building management. The listing finally came down 5 days later. No apology, no acknowledgement. It just disappeared. I thought maybe that would be the end of it. But I didn't sleep easily. I started to notice every knock at the door, every ding of the elevator. I kept expecting to find another stranger with a suitcase waiting for their luxury suite. My home didn't feel like mine anymore. That was the hardest part. I changed the locks. Got the building's smart entry codes reset. Bought a Ring camera for the hallway. I even added a motion sensor and had the spare key hiding spot removed completely. It was like trying to wipe fingerprints from my soul. The building security team put a note on my file. Raven, redacted, is not permitted on the premises. Do not grant access. They even sent a building-wide memo subtly reminding residents that unauthorized subletting may result in legal action or lease termination. Neighbors started giving me sympathetic looks in the hallway. My privacy, my cherished, hard-earned privacy, was gone. In the weeks that followed, I tried to piece together how long she'd been doing it. Based on the reviews on the now-deleted listing, it looked like the first rental went up 2 weeks after she moved in. That meant she hadn't just been taking advantage of the situation, she'd planned it. She'd taken photos of the condo while I was at work. Rearranged the living room to look more like a designer stay. Moved things into drawers, closets, and hid personal items. She even posted staged pictures with captions like the perfect weekend escape. Gorgeous host with great city tips. I remember staring at that one for a long time. Gorgeous host. She used my face in one of the pictures. From a photo ID taken at a friend's birthday. Cropped, filtered, but unmistakably me. I had to sit down when I saw that. I wasn't just mad, I was humiliated. Not only had she invaded my home, violated my trust, and risked my lease, she'd pretended to be me. Or maybe just pretended to have my life. I kept wondering, what story was she telling people about herself to make this scam work? Was she pretending to be the owner of a chic downtown condo? The kind of woman who knew where to get artisan coffee and had recommendations for rooftop bars? Was she playing me, for profit? And more hauntingly, did it make her feel powerful? Because for a brief time, she had power. Over my home, my peace, my sense of safety. I debated calling her. Not to scream, but just to ask, why? I didn't. I knew she'd spin it. She'd turn it into how I never supported her or always thought I was better or owed her because I got the stable job and the city apartment and she didn't. But I don't owe anyone my sanctuary. Especially not someone who sees it as a business opportunity. A part of me, the old part of me that still feels 12 and responsible for everything, wanted to give her another chance. But another, louder part of me, the part that had to clean up the mess she left behind, was done. I blocked her on everything. Changed my email. Set up filters for her name. Made it crystal clear to the building that she was not to be let in, even if she cried or begged or spun some sob story about losing her keys. I told the front desk, if she shows up, call the police. Immediately. And I meant it. But even with all the precautions, my guard never quite went down. I stopped hosting guests. Stopped making big plans. Cancelled a weekend retreat I'd booked months earlier. I started noticing just how much I'd lost, not just towels and an espresso machine, but a sense of calm I'd worked years to earn. A sanctuary violated is harder to restore than a broken chair or a hacked account. It shakes your instincts. Makes you doubt your own boundaries. I began to think less about what she'd taken, and more about how easily I'd given her access, all in the name of guilt. I kept asking myself the same question in quiet moments: how did I let this happen? Because I wasn't new to boundaries. I'd been through a painful divorce 8 years ago, one that left me emotionally and financially gutted. That experience alone taught me the value of privacy, stability, and, above all, control over my own space. And yet, when Raven called me from that Greyhound station, crying and desperate, my spine softened like it always had. There's something about family, especially when you're the older sibling, that makes you ignore all the lessons you bled to learn. Even as I was scrubbing guest room sheets that no longer felt like mine, I could still remember her voice on the phone. Shaky. Thin. Just one night, she said. A few days at most. She didn't ask to use my name. She didn't ask to hijack my home into a hustle. But that's the thing with Raven, she never really asks for anything. She just takes it. And then dares you to call it theft. About a month after she vanished, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I don't usually answer unlisted numbers, but something in my gut made me pick up. It was a woman named Jasmine. She was polite, articulate, and clearly uncomfortable. "Hi, I'm really sorry to bother you," she said, "but I think I might have been scammed, and I was hoping you could help." My stomach dropped. She'd booked the designer downtown condo for a weekend girls' trip with her cousin. She said the host, Raven, had been warm at first, offered restaurant suggestions, left a bottle of wine, but on the second night, there were issues. Noise complaints from neighbors, Wi-Fi mysteriously shut off, and a neighbor apparently told them, "The owner doesn't even rent this place out." That's when she started digging. And found me. She'd searched my address and name together, probably hoping to find verification. Instead, she found a LinkedIn profile. Mine. With the same face Raven had used in the listing photo. A name that didn't match the host's. She was shaken. And angry. She'd paid nearly $500 for the weekend and didn't know who to contact to get her money back. I thanked her for calling and gave her the report number from the police case. She was going to file her own complaint and share her receipts. That call rattled me. Not because it was the first, but because it wouldn't be the last. It made me realize that Raven hadn't just stepped on my life. She'd dragged my identity through mud for profit. After that, I started doing more research. Deep diving rental platforms, hunting for aliases or relistings under similar titles. She hadn't posted again using my condo, but I did find a new listing across town, different pictures, same style of language. Same Raven. She'd moved on to some other poor soul's property. Whether it was another scam or a complicit partner, I couldn't tell. But the pattern was crystal clear. This wasn't desperation. This was a method. I thought about reporting her again. I had screenshots. IP addresses. Contact information. But truthfully? I was exhausted. I'd spent years building a life that was mine. After my marriage collapsed, I spent 5 long years in a shoebox studio, living paycheck to paycheck, swearing to myself that the next place I moved into would be mine alone. I finally got there. It took budgeting, second jobs, and a gut-wrenching amount of patience. And Raven waltzed in and turned it into a damn timeshare. I started seeing a therapist. Not for the first time, but for the first time in years. The betrayal had stirred up old wounds. Things I thought I'd buried. Trust issues. Family guilt. That constant internal hum of responsibility that older siblings carry, especially in families like mine. I let her in, I said one afternoon, sitting in the too-wide office with a cup of herbal tea I didn't ask for. I didn't even hesitate. What does that say about me? The therapist, a woman named Nora with kind but no-nonsense eyes, didn't even blink. "It says you're human," she said. "And that you were hoping this time she'd show up differently." "She never has," I said. "But you always hope." That sentence sat in my chest for days. Because she was right. Every time Raven called, there was that tiny flicker of maybe this time. Maybe she'd gotten her act together. Maybe she was different. Maybe she was grateful. But she wasn't. She never was. The hardest part wasn't filing reports or dealing with the building board or replacing the damn towels. It wasn't even dealing with guests who showed up weeks later, confused and angry. The hardest part was mourning the idea of who I thought my sister could be. Because even when you know someone is bad for you, even when you have proof, there's still grief. There's grief in giving up hope. Grief in accepting that someone you share blood with is dangerous to your well-being. Grief in realizing that love, on its own, isn't always redemptive. One evening, I sat on the floor in the living room, lights off, just listening to the city. The soft hum of traffic, the faint music from a rooftop bar across the street, the wind pushing against the glass. The apartment was clean. Still. Quiet. But it didn't feel like mine. Not yet. Because even when the mess is gone, it leaves a residue. You can scrub the sheets, change the locks, repaint the walls. But you can't unfeel the violation. I didn't want to carry resentment forever. But forgiveness, true forgiveness, requires accountability, and Raven had never given me that. And so, one night about 6 weeks after she left, I sat at my dining table and opened a folder I'd been building quietly on my desktop, Raven Legal. It had everything: screenshots of her rental listing, emails from duped guests, the police report, a notarized statement from the building manager, and bank transactions where she'd collected payments through a third-party account that used my address. And I decided I was going to file a small claims suit. Not for revenge in the emotional sense. Not out of spite. But because the truth deserved a paper trail. And because maybe, just maybe, the only way to get Raven to stop was to make it inconvenient for her to keep going. I filed the claim for misuse of property, identity fraud, and damages related to breach of lease conditions. I requested $4,862, the cost of deep cleaning, lock replacements, fines from the building, and 3 canceled weekends. I couldn't safely rent the space out to visiting friends or family. A week later, I paid to have a professional server hand-deliver the court documents to the address listed on her most recent scam listing across town. She showed up to court a month later, wearing sunglasses indoors and an outfit that looked like she was trying to impress someone important. I sat across from her in a modest navy suit and told the truth. The judge didn't even need the full hour I'd blocked out. Once the evidence was shown, especially the bank screenshots and multiple reports from former guests, the judgment was granted in my favor. She was ordered to pay the full amount, plus court fees. She rolled her eyes in the courtroom, of course. Whispered something like, "Unbelievable," under her breath. But I didn't care. I walked out of that building with a calm I hadn't felt in months. Was she going to pay? Probably not willingly. But I knew exactly what to do next. The civil judgment let me file for wage garnishment, if she had any wages. That's where the delicious part came in. About 2 weeks after the court ruling, I got a LinkedIn message from an old coworker who now worked at a trendy co-working space startup in the West Loop. "You'll never guess who just started here as a community coordinator," she wrote. Saw her name on the staff roster. "Isn't this your sister?" I nearly dropped my phone. I took a screenshot of the company page. Looked up their HR department. Filed the judgment paperwork. Sent a formal wage garnishment request through Cook County. And then I waited. A month later, I got a check. $143.82. It was oddly specific. And deeply satisfying. Because it meant she had a real job. One she probably liked. One she'd have to explain this deduction to. One that, if she left, would only lead to another filing. Over the next several months, I kept receiving small payments, sometimes under $200, sometimes less than $80, but each one a little symbol that, for once, Raven couldn't slither away untouched. She stopped listing rentals under her name after that. Maybe she learned her lesson. Maybe she just got better at hiding. Either way, I stopped watching. I reclaimed my apartment after that, not just physically, but spiritually. I hosted a dinner for my coworkers. Started having friends over again. Bought a new espresso machine, better than the last one. Repainted the second bedroom a soft green and turned it into a reading room. I even planted a few herbs on the windowsill. Basil, rosemary, mint. Life settled back into its proper rhythm, quiet, clean, mine. I never heard from Raven again, not directly. But every so often, a tiny payment would show up. Like a ghost. Or a receipt. And each time, it made me smile, not because I wanted revenge, but because I finally had something Raven had never given me before. Closure. Let my sister stay in my condo when she was homeless. She secretly turned it into an Airbnb, rented it out using my identity, and nearly got me evicted. I gathered evidence, filed a civil suit, and got a judgment against her. When she finally got a real job, I garnished her wages. Small amounts still come in to this day, and I've never let her back into my life.